What's up, everyone? My name is Joshua, and welcome to Conversations with Joshua T. Berglan on the World's Mayor Experience, which you can find at joshuatberglan.com. Thank you so much for being here. We have an exciting guest. I don't know how exciting talking about diabetes is, but it's going to be interesting and informative. I worked with diabetic patients for 18 years. I'm not a doctor, but I did work in complex rehab medical equipment for 18 years. I'm very passionate. I also worked with diabetics for diabetic shoes, like custom diabetic shoes. And I've really just been around that demographic for a long time in my life. My aunt has diabetes, really struggles with it, but she's learned to thrive. One of my friends that I spent in my adult life grew up with, her daughter has type 2 diabetes and has become an activist, and it's really, really inspiring. So I don't know all the ins and outs on diabetes right now. I don't know what it's like. I don't know what some of the misnomers are. I don't know what the updates on medication and how all that works. But I do know that there's a lot of misconceptions about it. There's a lot of, there's even stigmas around diabetes. And so I'm excited to get into this to learn more about it and also know why, after Chet retired, why he's now going down this path to advocate and to bring awareness to diabetes, and also to dispel the myths about diabetes. I mean, we're going to get into why he's doing that, what that's all about. And so this is going to be really, really informative. I'm excited about this conversation. And even though it's not going to be as titillating as some of the other broadcasts we've done, it does not minimize the importance of it. I do a wide range of broadcasts, which I'm very grateful for. I don't really follow one niche. I have a lot of interest. Heck, I may even talk about sports one day. Even though I think sports are rigged, I still enjoy watching them, but that's another conversation. Anyway, so this is going to be great. I want to give a shout out really quick and I'm not sponsored by this brand or anything yet, because something's going to happen, because I'm obsessed. I want to give a shout out to GenoStem. There's a big, long backstory about how I met GenoStem. Several years ago, when I was a buyer for direct sales companies, I was looking for innovative products that just stood out as unique, franchise products that you could build a company around. And I got sent these two products when I reconnected with Lauriston from GenoStem after, it's been like 5 years. And I got on TikTok. Boy, that platform gives me anxiety, but there's no doubt it's important. But I got on TikTok, and the first recommended friend I had was Lauriston, and I hadn't talked to him in 5 years. So when I reached out to him, I told him that, hey, I've been using Shilajit to help with testosterone and to help with my moods and to help with the inflammation. And like all of a sudden, it's just stopped working for me. And I don't know why. And I was starting to regress. My body was in pain. I was hurting. My mental health was really, really struggling. And even though I have mental health issues, the fact is that I have good days and bad days. But when I feel like crap, it makes those bad days happen more often. And I've been feeling like crap, even taking pre-workout, even taking nootropics, even with caffeine, and even taking Shilajit. I was feeling like crap. So I've been watching his videos on TikTok. I'm going, I gotta try this. I gotta try these peptides. Like I know about synthetic peptides because I work with a lot of physicians that use the synthetic peptides, but natural peptides, and I'm seeing this dog that was basically dying, and all of a sudden it's back to life and it's running around like a maniac. And then I'm looking at Lauriston, who I think has a 2-year-old baby and he's 70 years old. I hope I'm not aging you, Lauriston, but oh my gosh. So he just had a baby, and he looks like he's in his 20s. Like, I got to try this. So I go, hey, can I try these products? So he sent me 2 bottles, these 2 bottles. And he has multiple products. He has other products, but these are the 2 I'm taking. The Live Young, Feel Young Pro product and the HDP Host Defense Peptides. That's fortified with zinc and vitamin C, but there's a lot going on here with these hexatide peptides. I will tell you this. I'm 4 days into using it. in 4 days in a row, because literally after the second dose, the first day I took it, I started to feel alive, alive. Like if the wind blew a certain way, you know, it's a horny teenager joke. Get it? Anyway, it just, my body is circulating with energy and I feel great and I don't need caffeine and I don't need all of this other stuff. And I'm like, how is this possible? Because this is day one. Now I'm on day 4. I feel strong. I feel alive. I feel happy. My brain feels kind of calm, even though I have a lot of energy. I don't know what's going on with me, but I'm loving it. I'm loving that at 44 years old, I'm starting to feel the same way I did when I was in my 20s before I started damaging my body with meth and cocaine and alcohol and anything else I could stick in my nose and shoot in my arm. I did a lot of damage to myself and I have not felt really good in a long time. Typically what happens is when I wake up in the morning, I do my quiet time and my quiet times are long. And a lot of that reason is because I feel like crap for the first several hours into the day. I go to the gym just to not feel like crap, if that gives you an idea. But it's typically not even until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon that I start to feel somewhat normal. The last 3 days, I've woken up invigorated, strong, natural energy, awake, and my body didn't hurt. And I also didn't feel like death mentally. I'm amazed. I'm amazed. And I don't know what else to say about it, but I highly recommend you all check out genostem.com. I hope that's the website. I didn't look that up. Yeah, genostem.com. Check it out. Read about it. I don't have anything I'm not trying to sell this to you. I just recommend right now that if you're struggling physically, if you're struggling mentally, there's something to this. There's something to this. So I want to give a shout out to Genostem and thank you, Lauriston, for these products. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited about this broadcast. Mr. Chet Galaska is here. He's going to educate us on diabetes. We're going to learn a lot from him. But thank you for being here. God bless you. Let's have a great show. And welcome back to Conversations with Joshua T. Berglan. Today, I'm really, really excited to introduce to you. I actually just had a nice little conversation before we popped on camera here with our guest, Chet, and we were talking about Northfield, Minnesota, where I live. And not many people know Northfield, but it was a fun chat. And so I can sincerely say to you now that I'm very excited about this broadcast and having this conversation. But Chet Galaska, is it Chet Galaska? Yeah, Chet Galaska's efforts in educating and dispelling myths about diabetes highlight a significant issue in healthcare communication. Diabetes, a complex and often misunderstood disease, affects millions worldwide. Misconceptions about its causes, management, and impact can lead to stigma, inadequate self-care, and even social isolation for those living with the condition. Galaska's work, including the book, The Diabetes Book, What Everyone Should Know, and the Challenges Diabetes Program, CDP, aims to provide accurate, accessible information to a broad audience. This includes not only those diagnosed with diabetes, but also their caregivers and the general public. His approach recognizes the importance of educating the wider community to foster a support environment. By doing this, he aims to reduce the stigma associated with diabetes, encourage effective importance of educating the wider community to foster a supportive environment. By doing this, he aims to reduce the stigma associated with diabetes, encourage effective management of the condition, and promote a more empathetic understanding of the challenges faced by those affected. Creating an informed and supportive social environment is crucial. It not only aids in better management of the condition, but also helps in the emotional and psychological well-being of those with diabetes. Galaska's goal of encouraging a serious approach to diabetes among those who don't have it is equally important. This can lead to a more support for research, better health policies, and an overall healthier society where chronic conditions like diabetes are better managed and understood. Galaska's efforts as a retired businessman turned advocate exemplify how individuals can contribute significantly to public health education and awareness, especially in areas riddled with myths and misunderstandings. So with that said, it is a great pleasure for me to introduce to you a very wonderful man. Chet, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Joshua, and
Thank
I
you for
really
being here.
appreciate. You're welcome. I appreciate that introduction. You really just about covered all the bases, and you summed it up. You know, my goal is to educate people in general so they understand the facts about diabetes and support diabetics rather than criticizing them, which happens more often than you would think. So, having given you that compliment, if I can get started, I can tell you why I'm doing this in the first place.
Well, that's actually my first question, because why after retirement take this on?
Well, I've had type 1 diabetes since 1981. That's over 40 years. So I know quite a bit about it. It is hard to deal with. It's gotten easier lately, but it's still hard to deal with. I was in Chicago a few years ago when Ron Santo was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. During that week, there was a lot of press about him in the local papers and radio and whatnot. And it turned out that he had type 1 diabetes back in the 1960s. Now, back then, we knew much less about diabetes than we do today. And Santo kept it a secret because he was afraid the Cubs would fire him if they found out that he had diabetes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty serious thing, Josh, because especially with type 1, we have to take insulin. And that the team may not have wanted to deal with that. So anyway, there's a story associated with Santo, but you have to know something about insulin before I tell the story. If you take insulin, it can reduce your blood sugar to very low levels. This becomes a problem because unlike other tissues in the body, your brain doesn't store glucose. It takes it directly from the bloodstream. That means that when there isn't much sugar in the blood, the brain starts to go haywire. You can start sweating. You can see double or triple. You lose your coordination. If it gets low enough, you can pass out. So it's a condition that's got to be dealt with. Luckily, it's easy to take care of because all you have to do is eat something sugary. It'll bring your blood sugar back up. And as soon as it comes back up, the brain comes back online and you're good to go. So that's the background. Ron was in a game in Chicago. It was the last of the ninth. The Cubs were down by 2. There were 2 outs and 2 men on base. Santo was in the on-deck circle, and he felt the symptoms of low blood glucose coming on. So he knew what was about to happen. And this doesn't happen instantly. You can feel it. It's a gradual process as it gets lower. He felt it coming on, and he just prayed that the guy at the plate would either hit a home run or make an out or something to get him off the field so he can get back to the dugout and eat his candy bar. He wasn't about to go back to the dugout and tell Leo DeRocher that he needed a candy bar at that moment. So he was stuck in the on-deck circle. Well, the guy at the plate walked. So now it's bases loaded. Santos said he walked up to the plate and he looked up seeing triple. There were 3 pitchers, 3 scoreboards, 30 some odd people standing out in the field. When the pitcher wound up and threw the ball, it looked like it had a slinky attached to the back of it. So he took a big cut at the ball, connected, and put it out of the park for a walk-off grand slam home run.
What?
Well, yeah, this is a true story. So he made it around the bases, got back to the dugout, ate his Snickers bar, and nobody was the wiser for 10 years after that when they had Ron Santo Day at Wrigley Field. And he came out to the public and said, for all this time, I've had type 1 diabetes.
Wow.
So that was the story. You know, most people would think, well, yeah, walk-off grand slam home run. It doesn't get any better than that. But people who take insulin know that the real victory was getting to that dugout before he collapsed.
Yeah.
Because most of us know what low blood sugars are, and we know what we need to do to take care of them. And we do it as seamlessly as that. So seamlessly that you don't even know we're doing it.
Yeah.
So this is something that we can relate to.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, I came home and I started telling that story, and I quickly realized how poorly most people understand diabetes. I could explain type 1, but then they asked me about type 2, and it turned out that what I believed to be true about type 2 was not. I had misconceptions about that as badly as many people have misconceptions about type 1. That's when I realized that our society's got a terrible problem with misinformation about diabetes. We don't understand the disease, and by extension, we don't understand what diabetics are going through either.
Why do you think that is? Because it seems intentional.
Well, in some ways, I have my suspicions. I think the disease has been presented badly in a very confusing way. Um, for example, we've got this idea that diabetes is curable, which it's not. But the reason they say that is that some people in the medical field define cure as differently than we do. We think a cure means the condition's gone away and it's not coming back. What they mean is that you're controlling your blood sugar well enough that it stayed below a certain threshold for a certain amount of time. You do that by watching your diet and exercising and taking medication, which is fine. But if you stop doing those things, all of a sudden you're uncured.
Oh my God. Hold on. I know that you're in the middle of something, but I relate to this from a mental health standpoint. There's been multiple times that I thought I'd been healed from DID or ASD or PTSD. I thought I was healed. And because I was doing all of those things, I was staying in my container. I was doing all the right things to keep me from exaggerate. I can't even think of the word now. From triggering myself or making one of the switches happen or bringing out one of the alters or any of the other issues that happen with my mental uniqueness. For a long time, I'm like, oh, I've been delivered. I'm set free. I'm good to go. I can go do anything I want to do now. And then boom, it hits me.
Yep.
Holy crap, where'd that come from? So I relate to it from that standpoint. I'm sorry. Continue, sir.
Well, Joshua, it's the same sort of thing. You know, they toss around this word cure or reversal. And people think that diabetics could cure this if they wanted to, but they just don't. Well, you know, if there was really a cure, why aren't diabetics doing it? Don't you think you know of any diabetics who actually did cure it? Well, there's nobody out there because it's not curable. But that's the sort of misinformation that's out there. A lot of times diabetics are criticized by people who don't understand it when they're going to eat a sugar cookie at a Christmas party, for example. You know, people will actually ask you sometimes, should you really be eating that? Well, these are people who don't understand that a diabetic can eat anything he wants. He's just got to manage it well enough that it doesn't drive his blood sugar too high. And you can eat a cookie and not eat something else. You know, you might not have a piece of bread in a sandwich or something like that to balance off the carbohydrates. But there's this instant judgmentalism that happens where people look at a diabetic and say, you know, sugar, that's poison for diabetics. He shouldn't be eating that. In fact, it's not poison, and we can eat sugars, but, you know, as safely as anybody else. We just have to watch how much of it that we do eat. Another thing, too, Josh, is that it's not just sugar. It's carbohydrates. Sugar is a form of carbohydrate, but starches are also a carbohydrate. Starches like potato or rice aren't as sweet as sugar is. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. 1 gram of starch digests into 1 gram of sugar. So 1 gram of bread is the same thing as 1 gram of a sugar cube. So there's a lot that diabetics have to deal with here. I mean, you really have to know the kinds of food you're eating and what kind of impact they're going to have on your blood glucose level.
So you look at the glycemic index, is that correct?
Well, no. The glycemic index has to do with how rapidly your body will absorb the glucose.
Oh, okay.
What I try to do is keep it simple enough that people understand it. The glycemic index is like a degree of difficulty more than people really need to know, especially when they're just learning the basics. When I talk to groups, I'm always astonished at how little they know. So, you know, simpler is better. So, you know, you asked about, you know, why people have these misconceptions. Another one is that A lot of people accept the fact that they've got diabetes and that their fate is to die from it. There are actual people who have told me that, runs in my family and never finishes well, that they all die. And that's where I have to get in and say, look, you can do something about this. Look at me. I've had it for over 40 years and I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. But you have to do the basic things that I'm going to tell you about. Another thing is that diabetics are led to believe that they cause this disease themselves. People think that they got it because they're overweight, or they're sedentary, or that they ate too much sugar, or were generally irresponsible. That's what people think because that's what they've been told. It's not true. If you look at the CDC statistics, they tell you that 70% of us are overweight, but only 10% of us have diabetes. That's 1 out of 7 overweight people that get diabetes. At the same time, there are many thin people who watch their diets and exercise who do get it. The reason for that is it's not your personal behavior that triggers it. It happens when a genetic predisposition encounters something in the environment that triggers it. We don't understand the genes too much, although a study was just done where they've identified over 200 genes that impact type 2 diabetes. And the triggers, we just don't know. They could be different for everybody. Once the condition is triggered, excuse me, that's when watching your weight and what you eat and exercising becomes critical. It's critical to treating it, but it doesn't initiate it.
What's one of the biggest misconceptions about diabetes that most people don't know? I know you talked about sugar and I know you talked about bread, but as far as like something that's related to the stigma around it, what would surprise me?
It might surprise you. Well, first, to back up a little bit, what I just explained about being overweight and sedentary and what you eat, that really is the biggest misconception that's out there. People who don't understand diabetes almost universally believe that. What might surprise you is the impact that this stigma has on people. Diabetics often keep this to themselves because they just don't want the grief of being judged by somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, because most of us have experienced that in one way or another. This idea that we're keeping it to ourselves is very common, but it's a problem because we don't give ourselves the peer support that victims of other diseases get. I would never equate cancer with diabetes, but cancer is a great example of a disease where there's a lot of social support for people who have that disease.
Yeah.
There are programs you can go to. People are more than happy to talk about it. People they talk to generally know something about cancer. They've got some direct or indirect experience with it. So you have a whole big support mechanism there. And if you experience any symptom that may lead you to think you've got cancer, well, you take care of it. You don't think twice about it. Well, diabetes isn't like that. Diabetics really don't talk about it too much to each other. And I'll give you an example in my own life. As I said, I've had this since 1981, but I kept it to myself for 30 years just to avoid the kind of stigma that I know is out there. When I finally decided to do something about the diabetes stigma and write my first book, I realized that I needed to talk to a lot of diabetics about it just to get their input into what they've experienced. So after 30 years, I told everybody I knew that I had diabetes. And if you know anybody else who has it, please let them know that I'd like to talk to them. And so I got the word out that way. There was one guy that I'd known for 20 years. And through the grapevine, he got the word. And then he came up to me and said, "So I hear you've got diabetes." And I said, "Yeah, I do." And he said, "That's funny. You don't look like a diabetic." Well, there you go, Josh. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. What did you expect a diabetic to look like?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, somebody sickly and disabled, I guess. I don't know. But here's the thing.
Shoes, something like that. I mean, that's,
Well, it wasn't
diabetic shoes.
it wasn't a good thing. He didn't say, Chet, you look like Superman. I'm surprised, diabetics like Superman. In a way we are, because we're dealing with a lot. We're doing life and we're dealing with this on top of it. So in a sense, maybe you are Superman. But I didn't want people to think I was weaker or less able than other people.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea, because of the misconceptions that are out there. Now, the business I was in, I owned a company with a partner. We started the thing from scratch. It was a foundry. What a foundry does is it melts metal and it pours it into molds to make all kinds of industrial products. So it can be dangerous. You're pouring 3,000 pounds of molten metal, and it's at 3,000 degrees. So, you got to do it right. So I didn't want people thinking, gee, watch out for Chet. I mean, he's diabetic. You never know what's going to happen next. So I didn't tell anybody, and that was one of the reasons. So I never had an instance, where diabetes came into play. But here's the connection with keeping it secret. A guy that worked for me for probably 25 years, he left the job, and I hadn't seen him in a long time, but I talked to him a few years ago. Turned out that he had type 2 diabetes. He had ignored it. He decided he couldn't take the pain anymore, so he went to the hospital. They took one leg off on one day and the other one off on the next. He told me that if I ever get diabetes, to make sure I take care of it. Well, it kind of hit me that he was one of the guys who didn't know that I had diabetes. I had known him for all that time. And it bothers me to think that he might have come to me if he had known that I was diabetic and said, Chet, I got diabetes. What can you tell me about it? And maybe he wouldn't have ignored it for all those years and then lost his life because of it. Because he did die. He died 2 years after I talked to him of diabetes complications. So this is why it's important to get our whole society to understand what's going on here and give diabetics the respect and consideration that they give to people who have other diseases.
I love that you're speaking out about this, because you can insert diabetes with anything,
Sure.
HIV, with cancer, with a mental health stigma, and it doesn't change the importance of talking about it and discussing it, because it sucks. No one wants to find out they're diabetic or have HIV or they have cancer. But then when you do, you have a choice. We have a choice. We can accept it and do something about it, take action, find a way to live a healthy life, find a way to thrive in society, find a way to live our best life, regardless of the circumstances around us or the quote unquote limitations.
Yep.
It becomes, I feel like, what is supposed to crush us and destroy us. And because it does some people, because they let it. But then we also have this opportunity to go, you know what? I'm not going to let diabetes stop me. I'm still going to live my life. I'm going to live the best life. I'm going to live the life I was created to live. And you know what? I'm going to tell my story, and I'm going to help other people. I'm going to show other people how I thrive with this condition or whatever it may be. And you're doing that. And that's so inspiring to me, because it's not easy to do, regardless of what it is, because in our own minds, it's the absolute worst thing that could ever happen when it happens. Yeah. But then we get this opportunity to use it for good, and then all of a sudden it becomes a blessing, and you're doing that. What's one of the biggest blessings that you've been able to experience as a diabetic?
The most gratifying thing that happens to me is when I'm done giving a diabetes course. That the course that I do is 3 weeks long. And at the end, a person will come up to me and said, the best thing you told me is that I didn't cause this. Josh, you can see the guilt and shame just drip off their faces because they've been living with this burden, thinking that they brought it on themselves for years and years. So that's really rewarding to me. Another thing is pointing out to people how simple changes can make a tremendous difference in their blood glucose levels and therefore in their life. One example is a woman who was in one of the classes, and we were talking about carbohydrates. As I mentioned, 1 gram of carb digests into 1 gram of sugar. Well, she said her sugars were over 200, which is high, and she couldn't do anything to get it down, didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
Well, it turned out that her husband worked the second shift. She liked to have dinner with him after he got home after work, and he liked pasta. Well, pasta is very high in carbohydrate. So I told her, just for the next week, because I was doing the classes once a week. So just for the next week, eat something besides pasta. Don't eat another carbohydrate like bread, but get yourself
Tacos.
tacos are better because the shells aren't that bad. Matter of fact, there's some very low carb taco shells out there. But yeah, greens, meats. I mean, there are a lot of lower carb, alternatives out there. Certainly lower than eating a plate full of spaghetti. It doesn't take much to reduce the carbs compared to that.
Yeah.
So that's what she did. And the following week she came in, said blood sugar's been around 110 every morning. So she went from over 200 to 110, and the pasta was the thing that was causing it.
Wow.
Because not only was she eating the pasta, but she was doing it just before she went to bed, so her body didn't have a chance to work any of it off either. So, when I come across an easy case like that,
Wow.
it's really gratifying because, I really helped change that person's life just by getting her to understand what she was doing. And it's not her fault that she didn't know. A lot of medical people don't understand the disease very well. You can go to an internist, but he's not an endocrinologist. He doesn't understand diabetes the way a specialist does.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't understand nutrition the way a nutritionist does. So a lot of times people don't get the information they really need. And I'm not knocking the internist at all. The fact is you go to the doctor today, and what do? You spend 15 minutes with them if you're lucky, and he spends half that time putting data into the computer. So they just plain don't have the time to tell you the stuff that they need to know. And that really is where I come in. My courses do that. And I've got a video right now that I'm finishing up. I'm going to put online. And that is the course in about 45 minutes. And people can educate themselves to the very basic things that everybody knows, but many diabetics don't know these things.
What about male health? So one of the things that there's a stigma around diabetics that with men that impotence comes into play and that it affects their endocrine system. Can you speak to that any?
Well, put it this way. You wind up with high blood glucose. It's in your blood, obviously. That glucose travels throughout your entire body, and it goes to every cell in your body. The reason high glucose is a problem is this. If you take a glass of water and you stir in, some sugar, what happens? The water gets sticky.
Yeah.
Your blood does the same thing. It gets sticky. And this is what causes.
What a great analogy. Wow. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And that's what helps put plaque in your system.
Yeah.
So that builds up and it causes everything to go haywire. You get cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, your eyes, you can go blind, you can lose limbs. It affects virtually everything. So you asked me particularly about males. Whatever system your body has, almost all of them get negatively impacted by high blood glucose.
So this is like true with whether you have diabetes or not. So let me ask you this. What is it plausible that non-diabetics should follow a diabetic diet for better health?
Well, it's not a bad idea, but there isn't really a diabetic diet. What we're asked to do is eat a balanced diet just like anybody else does. So,
fair.
It's really no different. There used to be diabetic diets that were pretty rigid, but now that's gone by the boards. They don't recommend that anymore. With normal people, by the way, their blood glucose levels fluctuate. When a normal person eats food, it gets digested into glucose. The bloodstream has a higher glucose level until that glucose goes into the cells of the body. It goes in there. So number one, it gives the cells energy, and number two, it's taken out of the blood. So the natural mechanism, it goes higher and lower. Normal people can actually have diabetic levels of blood glucose for a very short amount of time. It goes up, then it gets into the cells, and then it goes away. So the fluctuation doesn't really matter. It's the chronically high blood sugar levels that really cause the damage. Now, a normal blood sugar level is between 70 and 130. If you have untreated diabetes, it'll go up 300, 400, 500. Remember Anne Rice? She wrote a bunch of vampire novels.
I wrote Interview with a Vampire too, right? Isn't that one of her books?
She wrote a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So Anne Rice got type 2 diabetes. She passed out. She was essentially comatose. And her housekeeper called the ambulance. They brought her to the hospital. Her blood glucose level was over 800.
What?
Which, I mean, she came close to dying from it. So when I talk about high blood sugars, I'm talking about really monstrously high blood sugars in a lot of cases.
Wow.
But here's the good stuff. We actually can live with moderately high blood glucose levels. Like I said, the normal 70 to 130. What they recommend is to keep it around, the 150s or so on the average. So that is somewhat higher. It's not easy to do, but it is doable.
Wow. There is a lot. Like this is really kind of hitting home for me. And I'm just thinking about, I'm not diabetic that I know of, but we have a house that likes pasta, and the girl, my daughters like pasta. And so then I'll eat pasta, and then we like pizza too. And I don't eat a lot, but when I eat, I'll go out, I'll pasta or just whatever I can. And I love pasta. It's like a good comfort food for me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I like pasta too.
What I've noticed, though, to your point about the glucose, and this is why I'm grateful for your explanation, is because I started to notice, and I've backed off since because I got concerned. I think it was after we scheduled our interview, I started going, maybe I should look into this. But I started noticing that I'd feel stuff in my chest. I would feel my arms go numb. And it wasn't all the time. It wasn't constant, but it was there, and it was enough to go. And then feeling the circulation in my body virtually become non-existent. And so I've been kind of scared. And actually, before, you didn't see the intro, but I started taking these peptides. They're natural peptides. And I've noticed now the life coming back in my body for the first time ever. And I don't know if there's a relation to this or not. I have no idea. I don't know if it's diabetic. But the other part of this too is I've laid off of the carbohydrates and sugar, because I think it was right after we first scheduled this broadcast that I wanted to go look, and I'm like, I need to pay attention to this because something's off. Diabetes runs in my family. So I want to be around for a long time, and I want to be healthy. And these issues were starting to scare me. So this interview, this conversation that we're having is very, very timely, not just for me, but I think it is for a lot of other people too. So I know this is something you normally do at the beginning or the end, but I wanted to say I'm really grateful for all that you're sharing. And it's very evident that you actually know what you're talking about.
Well,
thank you for your wisdom, sir.
Well, you're welcome. I have learned a lot about this over the years, but one of the things I found is that when diabetics are taught by other people, they make it too complicated. I mentioned that earlier. It can be really complicated. And what I do is make complex things simple so that I put it in a form that people can really use. And that's one of my goals too, because really dealing with diabetes it's not rocket science. It's complicated and you have to learn a lot about it. But on the other hand, you don't have to read a lot of textbooks or anything like that to get it. All you need is a good, solid explanation. By the way, one of the other things I'm trying to do is dispel a lot of the bad stuff that's out there. There are, advertisements for miracle cures. There's that word cure again. The 1995, you can cure diabetes based on their definition of cure. But I watch these videos that are on YouTube and on the web. They always follow the same format. Might even be the same people doing all of them. I don't know. But they start off with this whole thing about how dangerous diabetes is, and they really scare you for the first few minutes. Then they explain how they've got this cure that they stumbled upon. The latest one was some guy who said he was on a mountaintop in a remote South Pacific island, and the people up there didn't have any diabetes, and it turned out they were doing ABC, and so he's got it now. He's got this surefire cure for diabetes, and he's going to get it out to you. And make sure you sign up and get it now, because before the pharma companies find out about it. Because once the pharmaceutical companies get it, I'm going to be gone and it's going to be off the market. It's always the same pitch.
Yes, it is, with all products, by the way.
Well, I'm sure it's everything.
Oh,
but the stuff is out there. That one of my favorites. It starts off with this picture of a cinnamon roll. You can almost see the steam coming off it, Josh. I mean, the thing, you salivate. I'm salivating just thinking about it. And,
I'm still thinking about tacos.
well, tacos are better than cinnamon rolls. Anyway, the thing starts off, this is a miracle cure for diabetes. And so you go through the whole thing, and then it turns out that the miracle cure is cinnamon, something you've got in your kitchen cabinet right now. But then you do other things too. And anyway, the danger of this kind of thing is that people listen to it and they actually believe it. I know one person who actually sprinkles cinnamon on her toast with jelly in the morning, thinking the cinnamon is going to take care of her diabetes. Well, come on, man. I mean, but this is what's out there. People just don't know, and they listen to this stuff and they figure, well, it's out there, so it must be true.
Has the last 3 years not taught people anything?
Boy, let's not go there. That's another show.
Off again. I'm enjoying my good standing on these other platforms now. I'd rather not get kicked off of social media again. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what to trust. But okay, that actually leads to this question. How do people, we'll stay with diabetes. When they're looking for a trusted source of information, how do they know how to discern between what's not a bunch of hoopla, made up stuff? It's not a marketing campaign. How do they know how to discern what's true and what's not? Because here's what I've learned about working in the healthcare field for as long as I did. Studies can be manipulated. Science can be manipulated. and people are for sale. So how do you know who to trust? And in other words, why should we trust you?
Well, you could trust me. Well, you don't know me. If you knew me, you would trust me.
Well, I mean, I do trust you, for the record. I'm asking this question.
No, I appreciate that. Well, I'll tell you that the way I've gotten my information is, number one, I've had a close relationship with my endocrinologist and my certified diabetes educator for many years. And they have taught me a lot, but I've also used them as a resource. Like when I run across a question that I've got that I can't find the answer to, I can email them and they'll get back to me. Or like the last time I saw my endocrinologist, I meet with her for an hour. Every time I see her, she devotes an hour to her, just like every other patient. And the last time I said, look, let's not talk about me. I want to talk about this diabetes program I'm doing, because I am getting the video completed. I sent her a copy of the video, and she loved it. So I was really happy about that. But I use them for primary sources. I also go to the websites of well-known places like the Mayo Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic or the Joslin Diabetes Center, the American Diabetes Association. These are all very reputable sites, and I don't use any element that hasn't been verified by at least one other source. So my sources aren't just random things that I picked up off the internet. They're reputable places. I've also got books that I've used a lot. Again, they're written by reputable experts in the field, typically endocrinologists. So that's what it is. What I'm telling you is rock solid stuff that's been verified. And I don't get into the weeds. I really talk about basic stuff like what I told you about carbohydrates and sugar, but also how do you identify carbohydrates? How do you know what foods will not raise your blood sugar? And there are a lot of those out there too. Uh, what I suggest people do makes common sense, and common sense is part of the package here too. I'm not going to try to wrestle you into thinking you ought to be taking this thing from a mountaintop and from some island, you know. But what I ask people to do is, once you've understood how to identify carbohydrates, just look at your own diet. When you get up in the morning, you're going to have breakfast. Your breakfast is probably pretty much the same every day. Your lunch is probably round about the same every day too. Dinners will be different, but over the course of a month, they're probably going to repeat. So the universe of foods you're really consuming is not that big. It's not like you have to look at a list of 1,000 foods and feel like you have to know the carb content of all of them.
That's true.
You just look at the ones that you're actually eating. Now, just like that woman with the 200 blood glucose level who stopped eating the pasta for a week, sometimes it's as easy as that. That people can look at it and say, wow, what I'm doing here, that's really high carb. One of the common things I found, Joshua, is that I'm surprised at how many people eat cold cereal as a snack before they go to bed. Cereals are generally very high in carbohydrate. But one of the favorite ones is Raisin Bran. And if you look at Raisin Bran, it's high carb in the first place. And then they sprinkle sugar on top of it anyway, as if there's not enough. And people eat that and then they go to bed. Well, that's low hanging fruit. If you just stop eating that Raisin Bran and eat some sort of protein instead, all of a sudden you've gone from a lot of sugar to no sugar. And that will make a difference in your average blood sugar level.
I am so motivated right now to eat this way and be smarter, because whether I'm diabetic or not doesn't matter. Like there's something to this. I remember with just going as simple as going gluten-free, the impact that had on my health. So I'm motivated. I've been searching for this. I got to be honest with you, Chet. I've looking for something to make my brain go, yeah, I want to do that when it comes to food, because I'll try diets.
Yep.
And then I get bored. And I don't even do the same style of broadcast every time. Like I change all the time. Like I just get fickle and I'm like, yeah, I gotta mix this up. Even though I kind of do like to get in routines, but I have been looking for the right food routine because I've been in such a bad food routine for so long. So this conversation is inspiring me in a lot of different ways, but one of them is to make better disciplined food choices. And one of them, because I don't typically eat until late at night. Like I try not to eat all day.
Yep.
I eat at night right before I go to bed, which probably makes no sense. But typically it's pasta or pizza or something like that. So I want to thank you again for this, because you're really helping my brain focus on the right spot.
Well, that's great. Don't come away with the idea that the pasta is going to cause diabetes, though. It won't. If you don't have, well, you probably do have the genetics, but if you don't hit the trigger, you're not going to get diabetes no matter how much pasta.
Well, I don't want to be a fat ass either.
Well,
I want to be in shape.
Obviously, it's better for you all around not to eat all that carbohydrate. Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to get in my fighting shape again. Not that I want to go fight anybody, but I want to be back in fighting shape, because I don't need a dad bod at 44. I'm gonna be fit still, dadgummit. Anyway, sorry.
Well, that's a good aspiration. When I was 44, I had the same aspiration. As a matter of fact, when I was 44, I started to pick up basketball game every Friday night for 10 years. We played basketball. I'm 72 now, so
really?
Yeah. So basketball, it's a little past my abilities at this point.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to go completely direction real quick with you. You're 70 years old, in your 70s.
Yeah.
And you are stepping in fully into this world of media. Like you've got the book, you're doing podcast, you're writing, you're educating, you've got courses. I mean, you are a media organization in your 70s. What inspired you to go this direction? Because there's a lot of people that are in their 40s that are seeing that the world is going all media. Every business has to be a media company. And there's people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that are resistant to this fact. And here you are in your 70s and you're fully embracing this. Where'd that come from?
Where it came from is when I realized how badly people misunderstand diabetes and how big the negative effects of that are. And the fact that nobody is trying to educate the general public at all, and certainly not educating them in a way they understand, I realized there was a need for this to be done. So I actually took it on as my retirement project. That's what I've been doing. And I like doing it. I love talking to podcasters. You know, I'm having a great time talking to you today because you guys help me, expand my audience. And that's what the social media is about. I'm still not very good at it, by the way. I'm just getting my feet wet. But Josh, I did my course for a number of years. I gave it several times at a clinic for a major hospital. And the doctor at the clinic got me in touch with the chief of medicine for the whole complex. Now, this is a big employer. They say Medical Center is the biggest employer in our entire part of the state. It's a huge operation. It took me months to sit down with this guy. So as a result of that, he had one of his endocrinologists go to my classes. And she sat through it for 3 weeks. I didn't introduce her. She just sat there like anybody else. And at the end, I went to her office and she said, this was really great. And she wrote me a glowing letter to her boss, the chief of medicine. And I really thought, we're going to go places now. Within a month, COVID hit. All of a sudden, it's all hands on deck. Nobody is doing anything but COVID for 3 years. But during those 3 years, I realized how powerful podcasting could be, because that whole industry has grown a lot over the past 2 or 3 years.
For sure.
And it dawned on me that I can reach a whole lot more people doing this than I can by having, 20 people in a class for 3 weeks at a time. I'm going nowhere as far as getting it out to the general public goes. So that's why I'm doing it.
Well, I think it's genius. And there's an organization that I work with that I highly recommend to you. I'm going to make an email introduction for you, but it's called babyboomers.org. Have you heard of them?
No.
So they have, I'm listed on there, even though I'm a little bit younger. My content is there, but it's because of some of the broadcasts that I do. That said, it's people in your age group that are doing podcasts, spreading information, not just for their peers, but also to leave for the younger generation to learn from. Because look, I'm all for the future technologies. I'm all for where we're going in the future. But without the wisdom of the past, we're doomed. And we need the fact that you're doing this and have embraced media the way that you have should inspire not just people from your generation, but even my generation and generations before me, because it's really inspiring to see what you're doing with your time, how you're doing it, and so on. So I'm going to make this introduction for you because it will be a very captive audience for your message and people that need to hear what you're talking about. So I'm going to send that email today to make an introduction for you. But listen, Chet, I am really grateful for your time and all that you've shared. I would like to give you the opportunity to plug your website, your book, and all the things that you're up to, where people can find you, where they can support you, where they can take your courses.
Sure.
But then also, if you have any last words that you want to share with the audience, I would like to give you the floor. The floor is yours, sir.
Excellent. Thanks for the reference to that website. That'll be great. I follow all that stuff up. I can be reached at my website. It's www.challengediabetes.us. It's .us, not .com. What you'll find is a little more background information on me. There are links to my books there. But shortly, hopefully in the next 2 months, I'll have a link to the diabetes program. It's a basic diabetes education that everybody can understand. As I mentioned, I make it simple enough that people get it. So that's where I can be reached. If you want to contact me, there's a contact us page there too. But I haven't been doing the courses lately, but the courses are all local. I've been doing them here in the Springfield area. So, people who are very far away, it's impractical to get here anyway. But you can get the content largely from that video. And if anybody ever has any questions, please let me know. I'm more than happy to answer them. What I'd like to share is that no matter who you are, diabetes impacts you in some way. A lot of people have it. Most of us know somebody who has it. A lot of people fear getting it. In fact, that's what I found with podcasters sometimes, Josh, that I'll explain to people that it starts with genetics and an environmental trigger. And some people have been stunned because they're doing wonderful things. They're eating right and they're exercising and all the rest of it. And they thought they were going to never get diabetes because they were doing the right things. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So sometimes it's information you don't want to know. But it's important that people understand it and give diabetics the credit they deserve for fighting the disease. Every person who gets educated and can share the information with somebody else is a little brick that helps us build that informed society that we're trying to create. In the end, we want to create a society that gives diabetics who fight it the respect they deserve. It also encourages those who don't fight it to take it seriously. It's two goals. One is to support those who fight it, and the other is to get those who aren't going to fight it to take it seriously. It's a big deal because, like my ex-employee I talked about, if you don't take care of it, it will kill you. It will absolutely kill you. In fact, for thousands of years, they diagnosed diabetes, and there was nothing to be done until the 1920s when they purified insulin. Until that point, if they detected sugar in your urine, the doctor wouldn't bother with you because he knew you were not going to live. Wow. That's how serious this is. So now, people may think, well, it's not that big a deal for me to handle it because with type 2 especially, it's a gradual thing and you can live with it. But while you're doing that, the damage is being done. Mm. And that's the kind of thing that people have to understand for themselves and for people they love.
Wow.
So I'm just from the bottom of my heart, please check my website in a couple of months. If the video's up there, I'm hoping that people will take it and share it with everybody they know. One of the things that I think is natural is to go to churches, especially Black churches, to be honest with you, because the African American community is more genetically susceptible to diabetes than others are. Other groups too, like Native Americans, Pacific Islanders, and a few others, they also are genetically more susceptible. But in the Black church, there's a ready-made place to share the facts. And if they would just share the facts there, you would reach a lot of people who really could use the information firsthand because they may very well have diabetes. But if people will go to civic groups, like I've spoken to Rotary clubs a lot, and Alliance clubs, you may have a book club you could show it at. Any venue you can think of, if you could share that video, it would go a long way toward getting the word out.
If you send it to me, one of the things that popped in my head as you were talking was creating a preferred referral list, because I get to meet people from all walks of life, and I don't really have a niche in what I do, because if somebody interests me or inspires me, I want to talk to them.
Yep.
And I don't have anyone to refer when it comes to diabetes education. So I'm going to build something out on my platform, and I would like, if you're open to this, or I'll just say that I'm willing to do this when it's ready.
Sure.
I'm happy to host that video on my platform with all of your links and your contact information. So when people come to my website and they see it as I have a really cool search feature on my platform where you can go in and type in any word and it'll pull up all of the videos that
Wow.
talks about that specific thing, and it goes directly to the spot in the video of where that's at.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and I have not talked about diabetes, I don't think, ever. Well, it's been several years since I have. And I would like to do that because I, one, think that you're a valuable resource. I would love to promote what you're doing. This is no cost to you at all. It would just be a resource. So I'm happy to
Appreciate
host
that.
that on my platform for people to see. I learned so much from this, not only that I get to apply to my life, but really what having a better understanding of what my friend's daughter's going through, what my
Right.
aunt's going through, and even people I grew up with. So, Chet, I just think that God bless you, man. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the work you're doing. And like I said, this offer stands. So whether you don't talk to me from a year from now or whatever, I'm telling you, this offer stands, and I would have to
Excellent.
support you.
Well, I'll tell you what, Josh, as soon as it's out, I'll get in touch with you.
Yes, sir. Sounds awesome.
Excellent.
Chet, God bless you. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.